In the heart of a jungle where sunlight struggled to pierce through the dense canopy, the world moved to an ancient rhythm. Leaves rustled under the weight of unseen creatures, and the distant roar of a tiger broke the silence, sending a ripple of unease through the air. This wasn't an ordinary jungle, it was alive with stories. Legends spoke of a tiger, scarred yet majestic, that had roamed these parts for decades, defying hunters and poachers alike. The villagers called it Shershah, the unyielding king of the forest. Arjun moved through the jungle with calculated precision, each step deliberate. He wasn't new to this environment. The jungle had been his battleground and sanctuary during his years as a soldier. Now, retired and carrying the weight of past failures, he found himself drawn back to this world. The villagers' plea for help wasn't something he could ignore. Livestock had gone missing, and fear hung heavy in the air. But Arjun sensed that this wasn't just about a tiger preying on cattle. There was more beneath the surface. The memories were still fresh. Years ago, he had encountered this tiger during a mission. Caught in an ambush by poachers, he had been cornered, his weapon jammed, his options running out. That's when the tiger appeared, charging at the poachers, scattering them into the depths of the jungle. It hadn't attacked him. It had merely looked at him, its amber eyes filled with something he couldn't quite name. Gratitude? Curiosity? Whatever it was, that moment had stayed with him, etched in his mind like a scar. Now, as he tracked the faint signs of the tiger's presence, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The jungle had a way of making you feel insignificant, like a mere intruder in a world that belonged to something far greater. He crouched near a patch of disturbed earth, tracing the outline of a massive paw print. It was fresh. His fingers brushed against the soil, feeling the weight of the moment. The roar echoed again, closer this time, and his heart quickened. The tiger was near. The villagers had told him about Ranveer, a notorious poacher who had arrived in the area recently. Arjun knew his type, ruthless, driven by greed, and indifferent to the destruction he left behind. The thought of Ranveer hunting the tiger filled him with a quiet rage. This wasn't just about saving an animal, it was about preserving something untamed and unbroken, a symbol of resilience in a world that sought to destroy it. The jungle grew darker as the sun dipped below the horizon, the shadows lengthening and merging. Arjun adjusted the strap of his bag, his senses on high alert. He had found shredded fabric near the riverbank earlier, likely from one of Ranveer's men. The markings on the trees suggested a crude path leading deeper into the jungle. Every detail added to the picture forming in his mind, a picture of danger, betrayal, and survival. As he moved forward, the sound of water grew louder, masking the subtler noises of the jungle. He paused, scanning the surroundings. Something felt off. His instincts, honed over years of life-threatening missions, told him to stay alert. He gripped the hilt of his knife, his eyes narrowing. The tiger's roar came again, this time followed by an eerie silence. Whatever lay ahead, Arjun knew one thing: the hunt had begun. Arjun pressed forward, his breathing steady as he followed the faint signs left behind. Broken branches, crushed grass, and faint scratches on tree bark told a story only someone with his experience could read. The jungle, vast and unforgiving, seemed to close in around him. Every step felt heavier, as if the air itself resisted his presence. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. Somewhere ahead, the tiger was moving too, its presence both a guide and a warning. The sound of a distant voice stopped him in his tracks. He crouched low, his ears straining. It wasn't the voice of the jungle, it was human. Slowly, he edged closer, careful to stay out of sight. Through the foliage, he caught glimpses of a small clearing. 3 men stood around a map spread on the ground, their rifles resting against nearby rocks. Ranveer was among them, speaking with the authority of someone used to command. His voice carried a mixture of confidence and menace, discussing the tiger like it was a prize waiting to be claimed. Arjun listened, piecing together their plan. They were setting up traps, strategically placed near water sources and game trails the tiger might use. The goal wasn't to kill but to capture. The payoff, they said, would be immense, buyers willing to pay for an animal of such legend. Their indifference to the consequences burned in Arjun's chest. To them, the tiger wasn't a symbol of survival, it was a commodity, a stepping stone to wealth. Backing away, Arjun moved deeper into the jungle, his mind racing. The traps would need to be disarmed, but that meant working quickly and silently, all while staying ahead of the poachers. The task was daunting, but he wasn't afraid. He had faced worse odds. What worried him was the tiger. If it stepped into one of those traps, it wouldn't have a chance. Its roar earlier had sounded strong, defiant, but now it was silent. The thought of the great beast lying helpless in a net or cage spurred him on. As the jungle thickened, Arjun came across the first trap. A crude but effective mechanism involving a baited noose hidden among the underbrush. He knelt, studying the setup. A single mistake could spring it, injuring him or worse. Slowly, he worked to dismantle it, his hands steady despite the pressure. The tension in the air was palpable, every sound amplified as if the jungle itself was holding its breath. He disabled 3 traps before the distant crack of a gunshot shattered the stillness. His heart leapt. The sound wasn't close, but it wasn't far either. Ranveer's men had likely encountered something, or worse, someone. Arjun quickened his pace, his mind racing with possibilities. He came across a second set of footprints near one of the traps, larger, heavier. Ranveer's men were spreading out, closing in on the tiger's territory. Arjun paused to catch his breath. He thought of the tiger, its amber eyes and the sheer will to survive etched in every scar on its body. This wasn't just a hunt, it was a battle for its freedom. And as long as he could move, think, and act, he would do everything in his power to ensure the jungle's king remained untamed. The air grew heavy as Arjun moved closer to the heart of the jungle. He knew Ranveer's men were closing in. Every sound, a snapping twig, a distant bird call, felt sharper, charged with tension. The tiger was near. He could feel its presence in the way the jungle seemed to hold its breath. But the poachers weren't far behind. The balance of the hunt was tipping, and Arjun had to act before it was too late. He came upon the edge of a clearing where the ground was disturbed. Fresh claw marks marred the earth, deep and deliberate. Nearby, Arjun spotted the unmistakable signs of a struggle, a broken branch, tufts of fur, and drag marks leading into the dense underbrush. His chest tightened. The tiger had been here, and it hadn't left willingly. Cautiously, Arjun followed the trail, his knife ready in case he stumbled into an ambush. The sounds of muffled voices grew louder, accompanied by the metallic clank of chains. As he crept closer, his worst fear was confirmed. In a small clearing, the tiger lay trapped, its powerful body tangled in a thick net laced with steel wires. Its growls were low and guttural, filled with pain and defiance, but its struggles were weakening. Ranveer stood a few feet away, barking orders at his men. They worked quickly, reinforcing the trap and preparing a cage large enough to contain the beast. Arjun scanned the scene, his mind racing. The poachers were armed, and they outnumbered him. A direct confrontation would be suicide. But he couldn't stand by and watch the tiger be taken. Moving silently, Arjun positioned himself closer, using the dense foliage as cover. His eyes darted between the men, assessing their movements and identifying weaknesses. He noticed a fuel canister near their supplies, likely meant for their transport. An idea began to form, but it required precision and timing. He grabbed a stone and hurled it into the bushes on the far side of the clearing. The sudden noise drew their attention, and 2 of the men went to investigate, leaving Ranveer and 1 other by the trap. Taking advantage of the distraction, Arjun moved swiftly toward the supplies. He grabbed the canister and tipped it over, letting the fuel spill onto the ground. Then, with a flint from his pack, he struck a spark, igniting the trail. The flames roared to life, spreading quickly and catching the poachers off guard. Chaos erupted as they scrambled to contain the fire, their focus diverted. Arjun used the moment to approach the trap. The tiger's amber eyes locked onto his, a flicker of recognition passing between them. He worked quickly, cutting through the net while murmuring calming words, though he knew the tiger didn't understand them. Just as the last wire snapped, the tiger lunged free, its roar shaking the jungle. The poachers froze, their weapons momentarily forgotten as the massive beast turned on them. Ranveer shouted for them to fire, but it was too late. The tiger charged, its raw power a blur of motion. Arjun didn't wait to see the outcome. He retreated into the shadows, knowing the jungle's king could handle the rest. As the chaos faded behind him, he allowed himself a moment to breathe. The tiger was free, and for now, the balance of the jungle was restored. The jungle was quiet again, save for the distant calls of birds reclaiming their territory. Arjun emerged from the thickets, his body weary, but his mind sharp. He had done what he could, but the fight wasn't over. The tiger had escaped, but Ranveer and his men wouldn't leave empty-handed. They'd regroup, plan, and return with more force. The thought lingered as Arjun made his way back to the village. When he arrived, the villagers greeted him with cautious relief. They had been watching the fires in the distance, fearing the worst. Arjun didn't say much. His face carried the story of the night. A few elders approached, asking about the tiger. He nodded once, and the tension eased. For now, the jungle's spirit was alive. But he knew they couldn't depend on luck or one man's efforts forever. Later, as he sat near the fire, Arjun thought about what the tiger represented. It wasn't just an animal, it was a symbol of survival, of defiance against forces seeking to dominate and destroy. The jungle's balance depended on the tiger, and so did the villagers' fragile coexistence with nature. Protecting it wasn't just an act of duty, it was a necessity. He began sketching a map of the area, marking spots where traps could be set and paths Ranveer might use to return. The villagers gathered around, watching as he explained how they could work together to protect the jungle. They had lived here for generations but had never organized against a threat like this. Arjun taught them what he could, how to track, how to recognize signs of danger, and how to create diversions without putting themselves at risk. As the night deepened, a sense of purpose began to grow among the villagers. They were no longer helpless witnesses to the poachers' actions. They were defenders of the land, united by a shared responsibility. Arjun saw the determination in their eyes, and for the first time in years, he felt a sense of peace. His failures in the past didn't define him anymore. Redemption wasn't found in words or recognition, it was in action. In the early hours of dawn, Arjun ventured back into the jungle. The tiger's tracks were faint but visible, leading deeper into the wilderness. He followed them to a ridge overlooking a wide expanse of forest. There, in the distance, he saw it. The tiger stood tall, its silhouette framed by the rising sun. It turned its head, as if acknowledging his presence, before disappearing into the trees. Arjun stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of the moment. The jungle had its king, and for now it was safe. He turned back toward the village, knowing his work wasn't done but confident that the fight was worth it. As he walked away, the sound of the tiger's roar echoed through the forest, a reminder of resilience, strength, and the unyielding spirit of the wild.